W. Bush Presidential Center. As many of you know, I had the pleasure to serve 7 years in the Bush administration, the last 2 as his press secretary. Most people think of President Bush as straightforward, confident, unapologetic, and while those sentiments are true, as his press secretary, I got to know him in a more personal light, and tonight I'll show you. Up first, the importance of sticking to principles.
Mr. President.
Welcome back to the Oval Office, Dana.
It's a little eerie because it feels like I should be preparing you for a press conference.
Exactly.
And I see you still have a clean desk, which is a good policy to have.
Yes, it is. It is eerie in a sense. We made sure that the Oval Office looked exactly like it was during my presidency. And
including the flowers.
Including the flowers. And we want people to be able to come in here and get a sense of the majesty of the office. This is the only office in a museum where a visitor can sit behind the desk or play like they're making a phone call and have their picture taken. So I think it's going to be a real attraction.
The last day of your presidency,
yes,
I was there, and I came in to say goodbye, and you said something I thought maybe you could repeat. It was about coming into office on the first day, wanting to make sure that when you left, that you could look yourself in the mirror and say, I stuck to my principles.
Yeah, I think that's important in life, and it's definitely important for the president to have a set of principles that one is willing to defend. So when I left Midland, I told a crowd of 30,000 friends, I'm leaving with a set of principles.
I'm thankful for the lessons and principles I learned here in Midland, Texas. I'm thankful for my friends. I'll come back to see you soon. God bless.
And when I came back in front of the same 30, although we looked a lot older, I said I didn't sell my soul. In other words, the principles are still an important part of my life.
Through it all, I stayed true to those convictions. And I'm coming home with my head held high and a sense of accomplishment.
That's important when you're running an organization so that the people who work with you know what you believe in and know those beliefs won't change.
It made it easier to be your press secretary.
Well, thank you.
There were times when I would get a question and I wouldn't necessarily have seen you yet, and I rarely went out on a limb. But there was one time in particular that I said, no, President Bush would stand with Prime Minister Maliki on the Basra. Remember when Maliki sent troops into Basra?
Yeah.
Initial reports from the United States, this happened at 4 in the morning U.S., was that the State Department and the Defense Department weren't happy with Maliki. And I had gone out on a limb and said at like 6 in the morning, President Bush stands with Prime Minister Maliki. And about 2 hours later at the senior staff meeting, Josh Bolten said, I want to make sure everybody's clear that President Bush stands with Prime Minister Maliki. And I said, oh, I said that! And I got the thing. But I remember I was able to do that, and I talk about this, and if I have a chance with students or in speeches, it was easier to be a press secretary for somebody that you knew the principles.
Yeah. Now, I remember the incident well, and of course I was very encouraged by the fact that he was showing leadership and that was willing to be decisive.
There was a time when I was very upset with an attack against you, and I was trying to deal with it, and then you called me into the Oval Office. And I always remind people, this is very early in the day, but when I came in, you said, I hear you're upset about something. And I said, yes, sir, I am. And you said, I'd like you to try to forgive. And I think about that leadership quality of forgiveness and how important that is for all of us to remember in politics.
Yeah, I remember the incident well. It was one of the most disturbing things that can happen on a team is when a team member is disloyal. I distinctly remember it well. As a matter of fact, you said, how can you possibly trust me, Mr. President, when a key member of the team had been disloyal to you? And I said, because you are who you are. And
I also asked you if I could throw that person under the bus first, and you said no.
No. Well, forgiveness is hard. But in forgiving, you actually liberate yourself from anger and negative thoughts.
Up next, Bush 43 on his father, Bush 41, and on number 1, George Washington.
As each of these leaders will tell you, no matter how much you may think you're ready to assume the office of the presidency. It's impossible to truly understand the nature of the job until it's yours, until you're sitting at that desk. And that's why every president gains a greater appreciation for all of those who served before them, for the leaders from both parties who've taken on the momentous challenges and felt the enormous weight of a nation on their shoulders. And for me, that appreciation very much extends to President Bush. And the first thing I found in that desk the day I took office was a letter from George, and one that demonstrated his compassion and his generosity. For he knew that I would come to learn what he had learned, that being president above all is a humbling job. There are moments where you make mistakes. There are times where you wish you could turn back the clock. And what I know is true about President Bush, and I hope my successor will say about me, is that we love this country and we do our best. Now, in the past, President Bush has said it's impossible to pass judgment on his presidency while he's still alive, so maybe this is a little bit premature, but even now there are certain things that we know for certain. We know about the son who was raised by two strong, loving parents in Midland, famously inheriting, as he says, my daddy's eyes and my mother's mouth. The young boy who once came home after a trip to a museum and proudly presented his horrified mother with a small dinosaur tailbone he had smuggled home in his pocket. I'll bet that went over great with Barbara. We know about the young man who met the love of his life at a dinner party, ditching his plans to go to bed early and instead talking with the brilliant and charming Laura Welsh late into the night. We know about the father who raised two remarkable, caring, beautiful daughters, even after they tried to discourage him from running for president, saying, "Dad, you're not as cool as you think you are." Mr. President, I can relate. And now we see President Bush, the grandfather, just beginning to spoil his brand new granddaughter. So we know President Bush the man, and what President Clinton said is absolutely true. To know the man is to like the man, because he's comfortable in his own skin. He knows who he is. He doesn't put on any pretenses. He takes his job seriously, but he doesn't take himself too seriously. He is a good man.